Hoping when we started later this hour. Today is our 10th lecture series. Will be hosted by Qefate Lerotholi, who is the founder of Think Design Studio. Qefate Lerotholi completed his MArch professional in the University of Witwatersrand. With this, his enthusiasm for great design and creation, Qefate visualized a world full of creative solutions to our everyday problems. A creative whose skill sets him apart from the lot and embody great knowledge in architecture, design, graphics, and urban planning, with a 10-year working experience under his resume. So he's actually from Lesotho. He was born and raised in Lesotho, has worked in South Africa, and he was kindly generous to come give this lecture today. Can we all give a round of applause to the Qefate?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope my voice is loud enough. I'm going to try make this as painless as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try keep it as informal, interactive. I'm going to be pinpointing, asking questions as I go ahead. So I don't believe in just a one-sided kind of presentation, because at the end of the presentation then one is flogged with a lot of questions, right? So I'm going to try and keep some of the wording as basic as possible, because at this level we're using quite ginormous words and approaches and this and that. Anyway, thank you loco, Rice Foundation, Tandi, Daniela, for hijacking me. This was done all in under 2 weeks. And to tell the truth, I'm actually not a fan of preparing presentations, because I end up not following the presentation that I do. So hence, when I keep everything as open as possible, then one is actually as natural as they are. So you're not acting here, you're actually being real. As you may have seen, the title of today's talk is, I want someone to remind me, I forgot. I saw someone looking at a chair. Is it you? What's today's title of the talk?
Taking a people-oriented approach.
Can everyone hear? Yeah. Okay, do you want to tell them?
Taking a people-oriented approach. It's important when designing.
Okay. Yeah. Do you guys understand what that catchphrase or topic was about? Or you coming here was for you to come learn, or to listen to me telling you what I know or what I want you to take out of this? Or did you kind of do your own kind of background research, inform yourself before you come to this lecture? Yes, no? Nothing. All right. So what just happened here is actually a perfect example of taking a people-oriented approach when things go wrong. In a different context, one would have just packed their laptop and left and said, technology isn't working, we'll have to come another day. However, we had to adapt. So there's a phrase that says adapt or die. So instead of dying, we had to adapt to the situation. I'm going to start off with, there's a word that keeps repeating itself. I'm sure all of you went past here and looked and saw a word, adapt, 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 adapt. I'm going to deviate a bit off today's topic, right? I'm going to be talking about a very personal project that I undertook last year at the Wits University in Johannesburg. It was titled Adapt. Adapt is basically a word that means changing, flexibility to suit a certain purpose, right? This was my approach to a research project that I proposed at the School of Architecture. So what what research projects basically are, or design dissertations or thesis projects are, is you as an architect come up with a research proposal which is something that is based on a problem that you see in society, and you are proposing a solution. So that solution is 50% research based, 50% solution based, which is you basically answering the research through design. Why adapt? Adapt is quite an interesting theory in our day-to-day life. We always have to adapt. You know, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Everything is tech, everything is digital, and we had to adapt as opposed to years ago when I started architecture. There was no CAD, which you guys are probably using for first year. You know, we used to use hand drawings, you know, and there's guys that came before us who knew nothing about 3D modeling and things like that. Why adapt? Adapt is, you know, we're living in a world where there's constant changes all the time. Me living in Johannesburg, coming from Lesotho, is some sort of similarities with my approach in this, is that I had to adapt to the way of life in Johannesburg when I came to Johannesburg from Lesotho. And in doing so, when I was looking for a site, I looked at a site that had a lot of problems. And I know as human beings, we try and avoid problems. We go for solutions that are easier to get. So I went to a site called Alexandra. I'm sure all of you have heard of Alexandra in the news. Alex is like, in Brazil they call them favelas. You know, Alex is, it's like a 70 square kilometer township that was designed to take about 80,000 people in the 60s. And right now, within the same parameters, there's about 820,000 residents. So during the apartheid days, Alex was designed as an area that was going to house all the domestic labor that worked on the other side in Sandton, all know Sandton, the economic district of Africa. Unfortunately, this gave us a bit of problem. I was going to show you, there's a lot of similar instances around South Africa where you have a juxtaposition of a highly densified township separated by a thin line, which is a street, and then you find an affluent area on the other side. Alex is one of those. You go to Cape Town, there's, I think it's Khayelitsha into Constantia, one of the most affluent areas in South Africa as well. So for me, that juxtaposition literally pushed me in trying to carve how can we use that energy between the two to use into Alex. So the presentation is basically derived from a personal Master of Architecture professional degree I did last year at Wits. The approach to adapt was basically a humanistic, people-oriented approach. And this is how this now comes back to today's lecture. We're looking at a people-oriented approach to architectural design, placing residents at the focal point of a design process. People create texture, character, and vibrance to a space, and therefore should play a vital role in the design process. Is this true or false? How true is that? Can anyone give me an example of what role can a person play in shaping the spaces around me? I'm going to randomly pick actually. I'm going to pick of what role or what the importance of putting people first when approaching design. It can be any form of design, not just architecture. Mechanical design, product design.
I think because architecture is for people, not people for architecture. So putting people first is always best.
So I'm going to give you a typical example. That seat you're sitting on, right? There's a lot of ergonomic studies that the product designer had to go through to understand how your back must respond to a seat. After how long sitting the way you're sitting, you're going to start feeling pain. What is the height that you must be sitting? You know, from the floor to whatever the base of the seat, you need X amount. That was based on using people as a study. So, like I'm saying, people-oriented design is not just architecture-based, but we live in a society where people are used to determine the design of any. This simple cell phone. From the palm of your cell phone, you can run your finger from one end to the end. That's called product user interface design, people-oriented. So my approach was basically saying, yes, this thing is actually widespread, but how do we actually narrow it down into architecture? I therefore then explored in a couple of theories, which I'm going to read out quickly. Architecture should be able to acknowledge and draw inspiration from its surroundings and provide solutions efficient and flexible enough for interaction between the space created and the end user. As such, in identifying potential public space, one needs to look at variables and attributes with substantial information for concise interrogation of the chosen area. My proposed research paper was looking at how a well-designed public space can be of importance within a township characterized by high population density, crime, poverty, and social issues. Remember I mentioned that it houses over 820,000 people within a 70 square kilometer perimeter. Now, how do I then go and try and find a space within a heavily contested area like that and try and recreate a recreational space? So the ADAPT was basically an ADAPT looking at adaptability in sports facilities, right? We all know the importance of sports in society. Wellness, health, promotes tourism, curbs crime, poverty, you name it. For me, looking at adaptability of sports facilities, sports was the only thing that I thought, based on my research, could be an anchor in growing Alex out of the negative public image it has. Because Alex is known for a lot of things. You go to South Africa, people think Soweto is most dangerous. Actually, I walk in Soweto, I've never had any incidents. Alex, when I was going through this research, I used to do it with, I used to go to the nearest police station and I had one officer helping me do my research, because that place is very good. Just like going to the favelas. You'll go in, but you'll hardly go out. Anyway, so I chose an existing old, dilapidated sporting facility, literally just a sports ground with a little structure that had toilets and you will see around the context, all you see is just shacks. Shacks. And as we speak, we're starting to get some of the people now, because of contestation of land and housing problems, people are now starting to encroach into that sports ground and start to build their own shacks. To a point where the municipality went and reinforced their fencing around, which for me was, I had a couple of comments, because you want to create a public space, you want to give people a sense of ownership in that space. So now you segregate this space, that's when you start getting vandalism. That was my biggest challenge. When I designed this thing, fine, this space is meant to be as recreational and open to anyone, but also think about the context you're facing. How do you change the mindset that people already have? Because everyone in Alex is just fighting for survival. So you introduce something foreign to them, it's another fight. However, we fought this fight and we won the battle. In facilitating the special design of the required program, a comprehensive and context-driven analysis is used to start the design dialogue between the facility, another empty site located to the south of it, and the people. In response to the theories investigated in driving the design of the sport and recreational facilities, the possibilities are explored of sport as a tool for social inclusion, integration, and an adaptive reuse of the existing space to respond to the contextual needs, as well as understanding the built environment in informal and kinetic cities. Do you guys understand the term kinetic cities or kinetic space, or just the word kinetic? Daniela?
No, please explain.
Actually, let me ask Mr. Moketi.
Kinetic?
A kinetic space, a kinetic place, or a kinetic something.
It's a place full of activity. It's a place full of activity, and it makes it safer by having a lot of things happening there, which in essence means that you have eyes on the streets. By having eyes on the streets means that people working there much safer than when there's hardly anything going on.
That is 100%. So Alex already is a vibrant kinetic city. You go there today, 2 weeks later, the same place you were, there's 5 other shacks that have come up. You go there a month later, those 5 shacks have been moved to the other side of the road. There's now a tire shop where those 5 shacks were. So there's constant change, hence the word adaptability. How do we adapt to such a kinetic space that's always changing? By listening to what people want. My laptop just died. I'm going to use yours. Then this triggered was a very intense correlational research approach that I had to do. So correlational research approach simply means gathering raw data, being on site, doing site analysis, doing questionnaires, following stats, SA facts, cross-referencing them with what's on the ground. Because with such kinetic spaces, stats SA was there 2 years ago. I'm there today. What they have on record has changed dramatically. So there had to be that intense understanding of what the stats say and what the actual on the street analysis is. You've all done site analysis. You've been taught site analysis, orientations of the sun and whatnot. But the most important in site analysis is actually spending time on the site and understanding not just the site, but whatever is around the site. Because whatever is around the site is what is going to inform what needs to be on that site. You have to respond to whatever is on the site. So you're not designing inside out, you're designing outside in. You're informing your program based on what your research was. So I had the problem, I had the idea, I had the site, but I did not have the program. Right? I knew there is this old dilapidated sports ground that I wanted to design an adaptive and reused facility there. But what I wanted it to have, I did not know at that time. And therefore I spent 6 months literally just trying to carve out the program. So how does one then get to understanding how to create program? So you look at your immediate context. You look at your macro, which is at a higher level context. You narrow it down to your micro context. So macro context, you're basically looking at transport networks, how to get to site, how are you going to draw people to the site, what energies are you gathering from the macro kind of level, and then you come down to a micro scale. So micro scale, now you're going down to, say, within a 500-meter radius around your site. You walk around every street corner, you look at what's happening. There's a salon, there's an informal food store, there's a school, there's this. You try and understand what do all these people want. This graphic here is literally based on what people want to do. Now, there will be a repetition of housing, and then you'll hear community facility, then you'll hear 24-hour clinic, then you start hearing, you start seeing your program. You start basically trying to put now the program into test. From getting your program, you try now to understand the user groups within those programs. So who's going to be using these programs? People are saying housing, but who's going to be using it? People want classrooms, but who's going to be using it? From there, there's a third element, is the times. It happens. At what times in the day will the sports facility be used? Or and then you cross-reference everything. All those 3 deliverables. And basically carving out a program. From there, you take the same program, you overlay it onto the site. That's where now you start interrogating how well now you're going to start designing. So designing does not really start from you going north and saying, I'm going to start putting everything on this orientation and whatnot. Everything is based on what's happening around the site. So from your mapping, from your on-site research, which I did, I literally went all around my site, mapped every little activity that happens around to shape and understand what programs will go to the east, north, south, west, central, and try and understand, well, does it work? Will it work? Will it work with the facility, or will it work with the outside, or will it work as a whole? Am I making sense? How many of you approach designing that way?
We're from the same school, so...
We're from the same school of thought, eh?
Yeah, so...
Yesterday I said something when I was at the radio station that I would like to share with you guys. I'm sure you've heard of the term think out of the box when you're creating, right? But with the years of experience that I've gathered, I always say this to my mentees: there is no box. The moment you start thinking there's no box, it's the moment you start to liberate your mindset. The fact that people say think out of the box, the fact that there's a box within that phrase, it means there's parameters bottling up your train of thought. Once you start thinking there's no box, then you can start challenging creativity, you can start challenging your mindset, you can start challenging society. Remember, we are evolving each and every single day. There's evolution. As long as you're still evolving within the box, you're not evolving. Right? So, I have been taught to think a certain way. When I started this research project, my approach to it was different to what I'm telling you right now. I simply thought everything is going to be desktop based, meaning I'm going to be gathering information from my laptop, downloading, getting archives, doing this, doing that, going to site, doing what all of you do. It's just taking pictures of the site. Right? Am I right or wrong? Or going to Google Earth and just trying to see what's there, and then that's it. Where north is, where the sun patterns go, and where the winds are, and then you're done, you start designing. How many of you will spend a full week before they can start designing, sitting on the site every single day, just watching traffic? You do. 1 out of a whole class. Maybe you must come lecture with me here. But yeah, so like I said, I'm not here to come boast about the presentation. I'm here just to share knowledge, right, about people-oriented design. Where were we? I get lost all the time. I then went back to understand what it takes to create a people-friendly environment. Remember I said initially when I approached the site, it only had a very old soccer ground and a structure that had toilets in there. And an empty site, which was starting to get infested with shacks. Now, I approached municipality and asked whether I could use that site to integrate with the bigger picture. So this project wasn't really an architectural project. It actually had an urban approach to the architect. It had a lot of urban studies to it. The architecture for me, I did it in the last month. The whole year, it was pretty much researching, understanding the urban dynamics. Right? Urban design has become one of the most important disciplines in society because you look at master planning, big fear. Master planning, urban design, people confuse them. They're not really the same, but they're within the same order. Who understands what urban design is? We all know what architecture is, right? But I know if I ask you guys what architecture is, I'm going to get 20 different answers. Some will say it's a science, some will say it's an art, some will say it's philosophy, some will say it's...
about creating strategies that will last probably about 100 years. Because strategies are stronger than a plan or an idea that can only last a few years. So in essence, when you're talking about urban design, you're looking about the future growth, potentials for business, education. You're talking about housing, affordable housing, mixed-use housing, and so forth. So it's not just because when you talk about planning, you're talking about zoning, which in essence means that you dedicate certain areas for schooling, you dedicate certain areas for housing and so forth. But when you're dealing with urban design, you're looking from a point of view of how do I integrate all of these things seamlessly.
That's true. Urban design and architecture is basically a strategy for future. Adapt or die. You go back to it. You build this now, 20 years to come, there's different creatures inhabiting that space. Are they going to take down the structure and build what's going to suit them? Or are we going to build something that we can foresee it, blending itself into the different patterns? That's architecture and urban design. A lot of African cities don't have that. You'll see it with our very bad transport networks, infrastructure as a whole. No ideas or no provisions for expansions for buildings in the country. Or just everything being built with no provision for expansion of roads. That's where you see no correlation or no thinking ahead within that. Anyway, so the approach was to create from the research that I got was these guys do not want another static structure that is just glorified and looking good and it looks beautiful, it's picturesque and it's going to win awards by as this beautiful thing that is just come into a very vibrant city and it just sits there and no one's going to use it. And the approach was basically understanding how to make it as user-friendly as possible. And how you get that is by making it more into a recreational space than a formal sporting facility. What does a recreational space entail? You have formal and informal. It's basically a public space that is accessible to all, that is active, that is passive, that is organized, that is unorganized, that is indoor, that is outdoor. That is for youth, adults, and for everyone. You have a lot of examples of recreational spaces, open parks, museums, theme parks, name it. Sports facilities, in a way, you can say recreational facilities, but the moment you close them out and isolate them, it doesn't become a recreational space anymore. Because you only use it when you go for a function, and after that everything, doors are locked. That's when then it becomes an unwanted situation. I'm going to fast forward. I know we don't have much time. So from all of that research, I broke down my program into 4 components. 50% to recreation, 15% to knowledge, another 15% in between, the last 20% to leisure. The recreational 50% included introducing and basically the existing soccer field, just basically re-upgrading it and creating a proper multi-functional outdoor sports facility. So we introduced combination courts, tennis courts, netball fields, soccer ground that can be turned into a function space, outdoor function space, and so on and so forth. We introduced a gym and wellness center. So with the gym and wellness center, we had an indoor gym and we had an outdoor gym. You'll see in a lot of first world countries, their whole street gyms has become something of a lifestyle. You'll be in a bus going to school, and then you drive past the park, and then you'll see old people outside in the park doing street gym. You know, that is one of the most vital things in societies that know nothing about wellness. It's just enforcing people just to walk into this open space and start using the gym, as opposed to going to Virgin Active and whatnot and then having to pay. You get my drift. So we introduced that. We introduced an indoor multi-purpose recreational hall and an outdoor play park for kids. On the knowledge-based side, we have a couple of schools within our site there, where I also spent quite some time interviewing students, interviewing the lecturers, and picked up that most of these schools, primary schools and high schools, don't have examination halls, don't have function halls, don't have playing space. It's all literally you go into a classroom and you leave. That is bad for your mindset. So what we then did is, as an urban approach, was to link our project into the schools and lend an extension into our site, where then we created a public library that would be used by the public and used by the schools. Right? Again, when I showed you this matrix that I said there's program, there's user groups, there's also times. So we also designed all of these programs based on who's going to be using them at what times. Right? We had a multimedia center, we had a resource research space, an incubation workshop space, an auditorium, and an exhibition space. We had in-between spaces where we had recreational circulation spaces, retail promenades, services and storage. We had some offices, security, and we then had leisure. Leisure, we were looking at rooftop terraces. So with the rooftop terraces, what we designed was quite what would I say, a motivational rooftop terrace that the topography of our site allowed, at the highest point where we had our rooftop space, you could see all the way into center. Basically saying, you may be here in Alex, but we're giving you a view of hope. You can see something just there. So that was basically as a design addition to say, we have an interesting topography, and at the highest point, how do we then culminate the design? By giving the users that opportunity to see into something and say, I can also get there. You see? So that also is now a philosophical or a psychological design approach into getting people to come use the space. I'm going to be very quick. We don't have time anymore. Sorry. So, of course, all of this went through a heavy research interrogation, multiple design approaches. I think we went through about 4 different design concepts. Basically, working with this framework. This was fixed, but now the idea was now how to get this to side. Got this on the side, we reorientated, we tried to respond to a certain analysis this side, but this side didn't work. We went this side, we did this worked, that didn't work. So we went through about 4 design interrogations for us to get to what you guys are seeing. And that was all based on testing all of the research and the findings through design. Right? And how were we also testing whether this design is working as opposed to the next one, as opposed to the next one, as opposed to the next one? How do we know, how do we interrogate whether a design works or not? As opposed to waiting for marks after you get marked and you're told you got 50%. Then you know, okay, my design wasn't working. How does one well know how to interrogate the design? Can anyone answer me that? Do you guys have one shot you think it's answered 1-2 questions? I've managed to fit everything in the program that the brief wants, therefore I'm good. Whether it meets whatever principles that you had set yourself, it doesn't matter. Then we are failing as a society. I will fast forward to, unfortunately, the beautiful drawings we're not going to show. We're going to show on the screen there, but I wanted to show you guys the 4 design processes and the pros and cons, and all of them, when I look at them, they work, but somehow they were not working for me to get to what we got to. Right? But then I will just quickly touch on why we ended up with this one. So the siting and the location was well located within easy vehicular and pedestrian access. It was situated close to the main roads, main arterial routes. The facility boasts easy access from the main highways and links directly into Sandton via public transport. The topography of the site also allowed an interesting dialogue between the street, the building, and the third layer, which is us now accessing Sandton vision. The context was very rich, though we said it was quite kinetic, but that came up as a very interesting tool for us to actually plug and play with the program, because you know that everything around there is always changing, and whatever we've catered for here, whatever changes that we've mapped, there's a drawing here that shows maps from 2002 to now, where we literally looked at the patterns around the site and the growth and the expansions and whatnot. So we used all of that to actually dictate what programs we will have on the east, west, south, and north. And when I say we went all the way from 2002 to 2018, I'm telling the truth. Literally interrogating a map from 2002, 2012, 2008, in increments of 2 years. Looking at the differences in the urban patterns, in creating a strategy for the next 50 years based on the previous 50 years. I'd like to pause it there and open table. So, to conclude, this project was awarded the best design thesis at Wits University. I came 4 out of a class of 32. The only native in the top 10. We then further went on and we got also nominated within the region, Gauteng, where Gauteng Institute for Architects nominated 4 best projects from all the universities. And we had an exhibition opening the whole of March where all these projects were exhibited. There were 16 of us from different universities, and there was a winner, and this project came third. Unfortunately, we couldn't project. I would have loved for you guys to see some images, but I think for another day. Yes, it's my schooling. So I started primary school, Qefate primary school. I then went to Lerotholi school. I think that's where my like for DIY started, because I took up technical drawing, woodwork, and metal. From Lerotholi school, I had a short stint at architectural firm where I was job shadowing just after Form 5. That's where I reinforced my idea that I actually wanted to go into architecture. Besides influences that I had to my left there, Mr. Rambi, because he was already ahead of me, he was already studying architecture. And my dad, being a structural engineer, I was always surrounded by people from that. Even so, I did not come to it. I went to University of Lesotho and I did urban and regional planning. That's why my understanding of urban planning comes from. Though I did not complete it, I only managed to complete second year, deregistered, and then I went to go do architecture at University of Natal. So when I was at University of Natal, in the third year of every year, they have what they call Murray and Roberts Architectural Student Competition. When I was doing third year, we entered that, myself and another colleague of mine, Karawa, just the two of us. Classes were paired in 4s, were grouped in 4s, and we just paired as just the two of us. Guess what happened? We won the regional competition. First natives at University of Natal to win that. We then went on to go compete nationally with all the other universities. I think we came 4 out of 16 or 17 universities. From there, I went on and I got to go work in Johannesburg at one of, if not the biggest firm in Africa, called Paragon Architects. I don't know if you guys have heard of Paragon. Yeah. Paragon Architects is one of the most dynamic firms, always challenging the landscape, always designing out of the box buildings, until they realize that there's no box. So I spent close to 8 years there. During my 8 years, I went there after my first degree, then I did my honors, and then while I was still working, and then I did an initial master's in 2013. We'll talk about that one. That was basically the parallels of architecture and music. One of the famous architects calls architecture frozen music. Think about it. So 2014, my journey with Paragon ended because I felt, most of the learnings I knew were from them, and I wanted to start spreading my wings. And I moved on to a smaller firm. When I got there, my architectural experience changed. I went from designing buildings into designing stadiums. So I spent some time traveling Europe, learning about stadium design, visiting the biggest stadiums, Wembley's, meeting the architects, meeting engineers, meeting all the people. And that's where that's where the idea of my recent master's thesis of sports facilities came up, because not only did we study affluent stadiums, but we also went into the gutters of Liverpool, the gutters of Brazil, where space is a problem and improvisation is done through innovative ways by architects, social people, engineers, and so on and so forth. And then last year, I decided to go back to it and do a professional master's focusing on sports and rehabilitation. sports in society. That's when then 2016, when I went for a master's, I resigned from the firm, and then I started Think Design Studios, which is my company. So what we do there, we do everything. So the core of the business is architecture, there's urban design, there's experiential design, there's product design, there's interior design, there's infrastructure photography. So when I mean product design, what I mean is we literally try and design products. We try and design pencil holders, we try and design seats, we try and design screen. We try and not just be a firm, but a one-stop shop of designers. And I may have been the visionary, but I have a lot of associates that I bring into the office, and I get people to bring in their own products or projects, and we just work within a creative space. The next Google office. Yes.
Okay. I would like to know what actually drives your passion in architecture. What actually drives the way you think, and basically how you come down to your concepts and the way you approach problems and your solutions as a whole.
I'd like to say every problem has a different approach. I don't really have the same methodology for every problem I come across. Probably the only common denominator in approaching all the problems I have is thinking.
Okay, so
I mean, with problems, you just look at the roots of the problems. You look at the patterns of the problem. You sit down, you think about it, you break it down into pieces. You look at different approaches. You look at what other people, because every problem has a solution. And whatever you're thinking of now has been thought of. It just hasn't been executed. One can hardly reinvent the wheel. So it's basically just looking at what problem there is, what solutions have been proposed for this problem. And that normally will inform whether you want to stand out and create your own approach that you think from all these other approaches, you think maybe yours could be a better solution. That's how I think we should approach any problem in life in general.
okay, so the second question is actually based on your project. Well, obviously the project would be an upgrade to Alexandra as a whole, because it does cry out for such upgrade. But as you approach the problem and then your final design, how does your design maybe has maybe a link, or maybe like a personality that's not really too far from us already, then, or the character of Alexandra itself? I mean, for example, I looked at, a while ago, I'm not even sure if my analysis is really correct, but if you look at projects like Soccer City, then you look at the location is in Soweto, and then Soweto as well has been flooded with shacks. Then if you look at the basic look or aesthetics of the stadium itself, is a bit rustic, which one would say it copies a lot from the environment around it.
Correct.
Okay, so like, how does yours get down to that?
Interesting enough, when I left Paragon to go join this other smaller firm, I didn't mention my then boss, she used to work at Bogartman Architects. So Bogartman, also one of the big African firms, they designed Soccer City, by the way. So after the project, she started her company. She was the head project designer for Soccer City. So she basically gave birth to the concept of Soccer City Stadium. So what the concept was there was the calabash, the African calabash. But the locality has been contested. Why so far out? There's a lot of history. I mean, there was an FNB stadium there, and it's in the mine dumps, and like you say, rustic materiality. Basically, the materiality reflects longevity of it basically tells about the aging of the project. Can it withstand environmental implications to it? The same approach and the same mindset was with this one. You know, there were two things to it. Do you insert a jewel in within a rustic environment, or do you morph into the environment where you have this rustic feel and then you're placing this new foreign object, but you're blending it in with the context? Again, that was an interrogation that I had with the 4 different designs. The other 3 were literally me creating an elephant that just shouted and said, hey, look, there's a new elephant in the space, you know. But at the end, thanks to my mentor, who's a very, very, very passionate person about with humanity, and we ended up using the same palette of materiality that I found within the set. So using concrete, exposing steel, exposing rough concrete and textures. Robust, because you're working with people. People mess up things. You know, it's just working with things that can hardly be. Also, that again was based on my research as well. It told me, at first I was like, you know what, I'm just going to not do it that way, I'm just going to be bold and create an elephant. Yeah.
Giving up your time and letting us use you in multiple ways while you're here, and we hope we'll see you back again. And thanks a lot, everybody, for your questions and making it interactive. Just a few announcements and a few questions for you. We are we're hoping to be able to get 2 speakers maybe in December. Are you guys still around if we do have 2 lectures in December? So who would come to like one on the 6th and one on the 13th if we were to have 2 amazing international speakers? One is Peter Rich, who I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, and the other one is Cameron Sinclair, the founder of Architecture for Humanity. So a show of hands if you'd come to both lectures. See if it would be worth it. Okay, a lot of you. Okay, great. Yes.
Actually, we might have a little challenge.
Okay.
Because the exams are starting on the 3rd.
3rd of December.
I think so.
Okay.
It's going to be a bit of a hassle. Even the venues are not going to be
The venue. Okay.
as available as.
All right. Okay. Maybe we'll liaise and see about that. When do the exams finish? Okay. Alrighty. Well, let's talk about that and see, because we have to fit in with their schedules because Cameron Sinclair lives in California, so he's happened to come to Cape Town, and he offered if it would make sense to possibly come to Lesotho. So we wanted to grab that opportunity and see, but we don't want him to come all this way if we're not going to have a full, a good enough or big enough audience. Another thing is, please, your feedback is really, really important. We also use participatory design in choosing the subject matter and the speakers for these. So this is your ideas. What do you want to hear about? That's why we give these surveys out. So please do fill them in and let us know what you find most useful. Remember, we're creating a space to get ideas, and I love that we have no box anymore. So we're not thinking outside of the box anymore, but it's to get us thinking and talking and discussing and challenging. And we have the film screenings as well, don't forget. So every 2 weeks there's always an event. By show of hands, who hears about this through social media? Through our Facebook page or our website? Only 1 or 2. Who sees posters around campus? Okay. Who is told by your lecturers there's a lecture coming on, so you should come? Right, the majority. Okay. Any other ways that you hear about it? WhatsApp? You get a WhatsApp message or an email? Okay. Any other ways? Okay. A few of you who are in this room I know are also, how many of you have heard of the Rise in the City competition that we're running? 3, 4, 5 of you. Okay. We're running a competition at the moment for affordable housing. One of the things that Qefate pointed out, that's a real problem, right? We've got growing populations and not enough affordable housing. So we're running a competition at the moment where students are designing, and they have mentors of professional architects who are mentoring them And this is to design a house for less than 50,000 maluti, because according to the National Housing Policy, 70% of the working population earns less than 1,000 maluti a month. That's our reality in Lesotho. So they have suggested that the affordable figure that the majority of the working population can afford is of 50,000 maluti or less. So that is the competition brief. We're currently accepting the preliminary designs, and the final submissions will be due in December, and then the winners will be announced in the new year. And I'm very excited to say that the Ministry of Local Government has said that they will collaborate with us and build one or two of the best designs to see what the market appetite is like. So it's really exciting. We're together trying to come up with solutions, and we can only do that with your participation and your ideas. So coming to lectures like this and sharing and hearing what other people are doing and have done, whether it's in theory or in practice, really helps feed to coming up with solutions together, feed the mind and those ideas. We are also coming to the end of our first cohort of fellows of our In Loco fellowship. Who's heard of In Loco? Okay, right. The word is getting out slowly. So it's a training program of design and build, very practical learning by doing. So you're actually working on a real life project, doing everything from design through to construction, project management, procurement, logistics, purchasing, negotiating, site management, and so on and so forth, and business training. So the idea is at the end of the fellowship, you're better armed to then set up your own company and business, employ yourselves and employ other people. So it's a solution that we're experimenting here in Lesotho that we hope to take to other countries in Africa, where there's also high levels of unemployment and a high need and demand for infrastructure development. So we will be advertising for additional new cohorts in 2019, and I would love also to hear your ideas of what's the best way to advertise the fellowship. So how many of you follow us on social media? Okay, very few of you. Okay, how many of you receive our newsletter? No one. Okay. Can I suggest, please, if you're interested in these initiatives, and I hope you are, because we're putting them on for you, and if you're not, then we're making a mistake because we're not being participatory enough in the programming we're doing. Please go to our website. It's RISE, R-I-S-E, like rise, RISE int, I-N-T, which is short for international, riseint.org. Sign up for our newsletter. Go onto our social media channels and follow us there, and please be informed. If you've got any other ideas of how we can reach out to you, we can maybe start a WhatsApp group as well. Please fill in the registration form so we've got your contact details as well, because we will be contacting you via email and via WhatsApp if you're on WhatsApp. Thank you so much, guys, and this shows true dedication, because you're not up there wasting your money on crazy Black Friday deals. You're here learning, sharing ideas.